Okay, Mr. Wee, you ready? All set? Okay, welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had one counselor with a bit of a glitch, so we've got that hopefully fixed. I'm going to call this Monday, April 26th council meeting to order. If we could have our national anthem at this time. Perfect. Thank you to the McKay Choir once again. We have one proclamation this evening, Council. I'm going to have Councillors Beauregard and Demary move this. That whereas throughout our community museums, art galleries, and heritage sites reflect our local history and culture and contribute to our development, and whereas this month provides an opportunity to increase awareness of our community's museums and celebrate the contributions these institutions make to quality of life, education, and economic development, and whereas museums, galleries, and heritage sites welcome visitors and tourists to our community, and whereas these museums, galleries, and heritage sites are valuable resources for education and learning and are important community hubs. Now therefore, I, Mayor William C. Steele, do hereby proclaim May 1st to 31st, 2021 as Museum Month in the City of Port Colborne and encourage all residents and tourists to join the local museum this May. Any questions to that, members? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, Council. Adoption of the agenda. I'll have Councillors Bagu and Clayliff move the agenda. Are there any questions to the agenda? And if everybody noticed, 7.1 has been removed this evening. Other than that, any other questions or further comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Disclosures of interest. I have one disclosure of interest for Councillor Beauregard, or one councillor has declared a conflict. Councillor Beauregard with items 7.8 and 20.2, and 20.2 is part of our confidential agenda this evening. Items pulled for are there any other conflicts? Thank you. Items pulled this evening. 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.9, 7.10, and 7.11. Any other items to be pulled? Thank you, Council. We have 3 sets of minutes this evening. Regular meeting of Council, April 12th. The public meeting, April the 19th. And regular meeting of Council, April the 19th. All of Councillors Bodner and Wells move the minutes. Any questions to any of those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Council. Just bringing up our... So we're on to presentations. Well, actually, no, there are two correspondence items. I better pass these. We have correspondence items 8.1 and 8.2. Councilors Danch and Bruno, move those. All in favor? That's carried. And all those other items that weren't pulled, I'll have Councilors Bagu and Kalaloff move those. All those in favor, please raise a hand. And that's carried. Okay. Correspondence. Okay, on to presentations. 9.1. Jonathan Hack, Director of Sierra Planning and Management, which is with regards to the road allowance survey and process update. And councillors, this is an update only. There are no decisions, obviously, tonight on this. So we will have our presentation, then go to questions from council. Hello, Jonathan. How are you this evening?
Very well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to provide an update. So good evening, everyone, and members of staff and the public that will be participating as well. So as you mentioned, this is an update to a piece of work that is ongoing as we work through as careful a process of consultation as possible. So I think Charlotte's going to kindly just flip the slides for me. So Charlotte, if you could do the honors on that first one, thank you. So the next couple of slides are just for a reminder to bring everyone back into the picture. The road allowances that we're talking about, there are about 7 of them, stretching from the west, from Lorraine, Weaver, Pinecrest, Cedar Bay, Silver Bay, Wildwood, Pleasant Beach, and then of course Holloway Bay Road as well. I hope I haven't missed any there, but if I have, we can return to them. They're all under study, that much I can assure you. And that's just a graphic there to remind us. What we're interested in, just for everyone's benefit again, is that these are road allowances, so they're public rights of way down to the beach ends of those road allowances. So they're not designated as public parks, meaning they're not operated as such by the municipality. There have been concerns about the impacts on residential amenity, as well as health and safety on the beach, and how that is within the public right of way, which is typically the 66 feet. Council has, through management, has commissioned us to look at some longer term solutions that may involve a range from the current enforcement practices right through to potential physical changes to improve the opportunities there. Next slide, please. Again, just to emphasize, these are just some pictures that we had taken back on some field work back in the fall, and it's just to indicate the range of differences. The one there just in the center of the picture, Weaver Road, is where there is an outflow operation down to the lake, and it is in no way sort of classified as a beach where the public would go and visit. The survey results sort of show that's not really one of these locations that warrants attention, other than the appropriate signage for members of the public that do wander down there or cycle down there as well. And some other, obviously, just to make the point, that top one is just a view from the Pleasant Beach Road right of way across the Shirkston Shore properties. Now that obviously is just a natural bay. You can see the kite borders there in the distance. This was in the early fall of last year, and it's a pretty magnificent spot. So we have to deal with some reality that people are going to come and congregate in these locations. So what do we do to try and improve it? The first thing is to make sure we speak to as many people as we can. So next slide, please. Yeah, just as a reminder for everyone, again, I was last invited us to speak to council just during the period at which we were doing a survey of residents within a particular zone. And that zone was essentially road allowance in the west, so Lorraine over to Holloway Bay, and then north to Highway 3 and Kalele Street. And if you'll recall, there was some concern on the part of interested citizens and beach users that we needed to have a broader public survey. And I think I articulated at the time that we have a particular reason we focus on a zone, but we wanted to make sure that we do make the survey as available as possible to everyone. And so we took that into account. We extended the point of the survey because of the difficulties that everyone faces in dealing with a closed border and the problems with the pandemic. There were also some considerations to make sure we tried to get as much input from property owners that live south of the international border. And I think that worked out pretty well in terms of how the results we got. But the consultation plan, as directed by management and certainly as endorsed by council, is to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's in terms of doing the right level of consultation. So we've slowed down a bit in terms of our work to try and focus on this. And this evening I want to give you that update. But just to summarize, we're talking to the public at large, certainly, of course, talking to property owners within that zone. We've talked to and can continue to do so potential commercial partners, cottage owners, and of course, importantly, once we come back with some more concrete solutions, that will be run firstly through senior management and then, of course, council and the public as well prior to any final recommendations. Next slide, thanks. So certainly don't intend to read everything on this slide. So just to give you some highlights of it, about 42% of those respondents within the main survey zone did indicate that their properties front onto one of the road allowances running north-south. And that was important because that's how people from outside of the area access these beach end road allowances. They come down those roadways, and then there is the issue, as everyone is aware, of whether they park, how do they park, how far do they walk, what is the level of amenity, and that impacts property owners. So that's a relevant metric for us as well. Just to indicate that we were very interested in the ownership and those that are within that zone I spoke about, as well as people who live elsewhere in the city and elsewhere in the region, and in some cases out of region that responded to the survey. About 57% own their properties or have owned them for more than 10 years. So we're dealing with people that know the area very well, and their views expressed, are therefore highly valuable based on that longevity. About 40% of those within that survey zone that I spoke about are seasonal residents, meaning it's not their primary residence, so it's their summer cottage. And very interesting from our perspective, about 30%, almost 1/3 of respondents within that survey zone indicated that they believe their properties have deeded access to the shoreline. And just for everyone's benefit, deeded access just means that regardless of whether you front onto the beach or otherwise, if your deed somewhere in the details of it indicates that you are enabled to get onto the beach, you have a right of access, then that is something that is essentially a right of title to that property owner. And that's something we need to take into account. And it furthered the opinion that making any changes to these road allowances, which might limit access for residents as well as visitors, but primarily for residents, was something that may be certainly problematic. And it was not necessarily part of our thinking. But as we did indicate earlier, it is necessary to put the full sweep of options open to the to City Council when we conduct this kind of research, from essentially closing those rights of way through to making sure that they're as usable as possible for all comers. Next slide, thanks. Now, I'm going to go through these as fast as I can because there's a lot of data, and happy to take any questions that you may have. But I want to just focus on highlights. Otherwise, it will be a long evening in this regard, and I know that you want to get through to other items. So, firstly, the overall number of responses: 475 responses from addresses. That's people who responded from within the zone, which is, just to remind everyone, from Holloway through to Lorraine and up to Highway 3 and Killaley. 295 out of zone. So they could have come from any number of places, generally in the region, generally in the city. That's about 770 in total. That's a great number in terms of statistical validity and more importantly, just being a good representation of people's interests and views. That's about 60% in zone, 40% out of zone. And you can see there that we asked the question, what's the closest road allowance? It just tells you, one of the things we wanted to find out is which of these 7 roads, because you're going to look at them differently depending on where you live, which one are you closest to, because we know that's the one that you're going to have the most interest in. And you can see there, a big third, 31% Pleasant Beach Road, Wildwood at 12, Silver Bay at 17%, and so on. So a good representation. Next slide. Thank you. This one is important because it indicates reasons, and any number of reasons were allowed to be reported. We did give them closed questions, I believe, on this particular one. So, tick a box as to which one applies. 90%, and these results are broken down. As you see, the lighter blue is for those in zone, out of zone, the darker blue. But you'll see there, foot access to the beach, pedestrian access to the beach is very important. Treating it as a public space for enjoyment, whether or not they actually, there is an ownership that runs down to the high water mark, for example. Generally speaking, and in talking to people, the ability to be able to get onto the beach and just walk and take in the ambience is something that is part and parcel and generally accepted. Obviously, we'll hear from people if otherwise. That's different than other questions that we get to. Okay, if you could just let's just move on a little bit. As I said, pedestrian access is most important. Next slide, please, Charlotte. Thank you. Just to go through this in just a little bit more, with a bit more speed. The questions are where are the problems? Parking in front of driveway, etc. Rather than focus on the details here, you'll see for the vast majority of respondents, it was an insignificant issue. Where it is significant in a very significant manner, it's generally in the Wildwood and the Pleasant Beach area. Again, this just confirms what we know in terms of where the volumes of people are coming and parking for access to the beach. Next slide. Parking on the shoulder, but not in front of your property. Again, you can see the weight of response there. To focus less on the sky blue, but more on the greens. And you can see that, again, in terms of where there is considered to be a significant or a very significant issue, it's, again, sort of Pleasant Beach, Wildwood, and to some extent, Silver Bay as well. Interesting from our perspective, Holloway Bay Road, which doesn't have a road all the way down, but we know is a concern, has prompted Fort Erie to be looking at that in terms of its future as well, and we're taking that on board in our work here as well. Next slide. Littering, again, you can see just by focusing on where the density is of those greens, you can see that 34%, 31% for Wildwood and Pleasant Beach report it as being a very significant problem, and progressively less elsewhere. Next slide. Illegal dumping, same again. Importantly, though, Holloway Bay represents some additional concerns there as well. And my brevity here is not to suggest that these things are not of significance, relatively speaking, in the other road allowances, but just for time, we need to focus on where the key outcomes are from this work. Next slide. Noise disturbance, ditto. Again, it's more on those areas to the east. Next one. Perceived trespass on properties. Excuse me. And again, this one is more interesting in that when we talk about perception of trespass, rather than sort of, it being documented as an actual trespass, you can see that property owners, excuse me, in a number of areas have some level of concern. And so we'll need to look at that in terms of signage and education throughout these road allowances. Next one. Washroom access, again, of more significance in the Wildwood and Pleasant Beach area. And so that's where we are going to be focusing in terms of if you do provide more amenities on or close to the beach, that's where you may seek to do it. Okay, next one. Now, these sort of remaining slides are very important because they enable us to measure people's tolerance or willingness to consider different ways to improve essentially the operation of those road allowances as it relates to their amenities and protecting their residential amenity. So what we've done here, I just need to read out what those measures were that we offered in the survey, and people were able to add others as well. But fencing, the first one, fencing sufficient to prevent public access entirely. So remember, we're going from the sort of fairly draconian measures that you might put in place through to those which are just nibbling around the edges of what you currently do and asking people's general tolerance towards it. So fencing to prevent public access entirely. And then just going left to right on your screen, maintaining the current policy of vehicular gates, which, as you can see there from the results, that was a popular measure. You can see that sort of royal blue bar. That means it's a popular measure, maintaining current policy of vehicular gates. Going back to the left with the turquoise, add more legal parking further away from the beach or on an off-street location. So in other words, adding parking. What did they think of that? Second, and then moving across, another option, sell the road allowance lands at the shore to private owners. A very permanent solution indeed. And then going back to the left-hand side, partial sale, but retain emergency access easement to the beach. And then the last one to the right there, creating public parks. So then you look at what each of the property owners that responded to the survey said, and the results are organized based on their nearest survey. Sorry, their nearest road allowance that is there for them. So looking at Lorraine Road, maintaining the vehicular gates is deemed to be the most significant option. There was some benefit there for creating public parks, which is interesting in that particular location. Weaver Road, again, maintain vehicular parks as the most popular solution. Pinecrest, similarly, but also a recognition of the need to add more legal parking further back from the beach itself. And Pinecrest is one where there is some off-road parking there as well, or off to the side. Cedar Bay, again, vehicular gates seen as popular, but so too the idea of maybe a quarter of people saying creation of some level of public park in that location, presumably, and an addition of legal parking. Silver Bay, slightly different numbers. Wildwood, again, slightly different numbers. Pleasant Beach, a mix, 30% indicating more parking, almost a quarter saying public park as an option. And then, we can talk about the numbers for Holloway Road. What this tells us, though, is if you look very much, one of the issues that was of concern for people is the idea that we have an option, sell the road allowance at the shore to private owners. And as you can see from the results of the survey, as expected, that is not a popular option at all. So I think it's fair to say not only from our, from our understanding of legal issues and good public policy, but also backed up by the survey, it's clear that that is not an option that people want. And then, you can also see that the partial sale is one that has some traction, but again, that has to be very carefully considered. And I don't think it's probably likely to be an option that we would take forward at this point. Next slide. Out of the zone, this is just to give you the same information based on out of the zone, and not surprisingly, the number of people want to see more. If you just look at the colors there, the turquoise and then the sea foam, the turquoise is to add more legal parking. The sea foam is the creation of public parks. We'll probably have to work on some of the design of these graphs for the report to make them accessible, certainly. But you can see that basically people want access. If you're out of the zone, you're filling out the survey in large part because this is an area where you do come and visit and it's important to you. And the survey needs to take that on board. Next slide, please. So the next steps are, to develop a range of policy and planning solutions, as well as perhaps give people an opportunity to review these survey results in a bit more detail. It's as you can appreciate, we're trying to sort of rush it through this evening. It is on the public record in that it's a presentation to council, but we're happy to go through the connection between survey results, good planning, the observed conditions on the ground, and the options going forward. And so that's the work that we wish to continue to do and present that to the public again with full transparency, and then come back with a recommendations report that again can be deliberated until management and council are satisfied that we've got the right balance here. I think that's it, and I thank you very much for your patience in going through what is a lot of numbers. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And remember, councillors, use your yellow hand to raise your hand to speak. Questions to Jonathan on this? Any questions this evening? Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Jonathan, if I may. Jonathan, on some of the graphs that you presented, you identified some N numbers. Now, N refers to the population of the study. Is that not correct?
Yeah, N is the sample size, the number of respondents in this case.
And when I look at that, and I see in the graph where it is, why do you access the beach? You have 770 respondents to that. Correct?
Well, yeah. So the ones that fill out the first questions, it amounts to 770 responses in total. There's going to be variation, as you can see, question to question, because some people don't complete that particular question for whatever reason. So we can't count that in the mix. So you'll see numbers do bounce around a little bit.
Okay, yeah, and that's what the question I had was, because I would expected it to be somewhat consistent, not to be deviating up to 20%, but there is a deviation of over 20% on those. And you didn't provide that stat on the other graphs, only on, I believe, 4 of the graphs that you have in here. Actually, only 3 of the graphs.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, Councillor, we can provide all of that detail if it's of value, whether it be in an appendix or some other form that you can go through just to see the efficacy of it all. You do find this is not a straightforward survey, and that there are 2 reasons for that. One is we're dealing with relatively complicated issues, and we're trying to get a non-biased survey across. And then secondly, we did open this up to out-of-zone residents as well. And as you can probably tell, some of the out-of-zone residents, there are some questions here which are just not necessarily relevant for them because they are not they don't live in the zone. And so that's part of the reason you might get some variation in the number of completed responses by individual question. But if anybody would like not only these percentages, but the raw numbers that go behind them as well, we're more than happy to provide that to you and to anybody.
Thank you, Jonathan. I have another little question here. The question being, you on the one, why do you access the beach? Some of the questions are fairly close together on the answers. For example, why do you use the access? Why do you use it? Do you use it for walking to the beach and from the beach, and you use it for walking along the beach? Those are fairly close. I mean, chicken, egg, what comes first, what comes last? So I'm just wondering how you would interpret those types of questions differently.
Well, through you, Your Worship, I very much appreciate that question. And I'm a little bit curious myself. I don't have the survey to hand. I could probably bring it up on screen. In fact, I'll do that if I can. But the question I think that you're asking of me, and I'm sort of responding, is whether these questions were closed questions, meaning they were choice boxes that you provided, or whether we looked at all of the responses and then categorized these based on the open-ended responses, which is possible as well. And I do apologize, I don't have that answer to hand, but I can do so. But one of the things that we did want to get at in our understanding is that, a lot of the properties have ownership going right onto the beach, right onto the sand, and in some cases right into the water. That's not always the case. And there are some parcels here around Cedar Bay, for example, that have what I'll call, for lack of a better term, horizontal land ownership. There's a strip that cuts across people's, north-south divisions between their parcels, but really is a beach ownership strip. Point being that it's quite a complicated picture. And so to the extent that someone currently lives there, goes to the beach there, after dinner on a summer's evening and walks effectively across other people's property, and there's no problem with that, I think, we wouldn't want to get in the way of that historical relationship. So we really do want to understand what people do on the beach, right down to that level of detail. But if you allow me, I appreciate the question. I'll see if I can get an answer to whether or not that's a close-ended question or open-ended responses.
All set, Councillor Wells?
No, I have.
Yep, keep going.
No, not yet. I have a little bit more. One just response to that is that when you speak about the strip cutting across the beaches, the road end allowance is more toward the 66 feet, not the beaches. And that leads me to the other comment that I have in regards to the photographs that are used. In the very first photograph of Shirkston Shores Echo Beach area, you're painting a very nice picture of that road end allowance when it's only 66 feet. So just looking for representation of the actual situation that we're dealing here. We're not trying to deal with the beaches. We're trying to deal with 66 feet of road allowance. So just to keep perspectives there, and also this here with a gorgeous picture of a beach, although it's beautiful and it's really welcoming and it's a great tourist attraction, some of our road ends we don't want that type of tourist attraction to the road end because it's unmanageable.
Through you, Your Worship, I just would agree. I mean, we're not trying to put rose-colored glasses on here. In fact, quite the opposite. The reality is that when you do go down to Pleasant Beach Road, as analysts, we go around the country doing this, looking at places. That is part of the draw. People know there's a natural bay there, and the fact that it's owned by Shirkston Shores, outside of the summer season, people are going to access it. So it is a reality. We're certainly not advertising that we should be allowing people to I guess, trespass onto anyone's properties. That is the issue, the 66 feet. There are a couple of parcels either side of Cedar Bay Road that are these lateral parcels, and we've actually, the city has been helpful in giving us the assessment records, and some of these ownerships date back to the 1920s, but they're not in public ownership. You may have dealt with this issue before, and you're fully aware of it, but there are, some of these parcels would allow for potential expansion if you could get rights of access onto them, and if you have the concurrence with property owners, and I'm not sure that would be the case. So just to clarify, we do understand it's 66 feet, and that is a very constrained environment for quote unquote a beach. So what you will see when we come back with some potential physical solutions, we might not be talking about just bucket and spade down on the beach, but something which is still a definition of a public access point, benches or something further back from the beach. I mean, we have a number of solutions, but I do want to assure you that we're not going to overstep the mark in terms of painting this as parks when they're not.
Councillor?
Thank you, because one of the concerns is that you go off of that 66 feet on either side and you are trespassing.
Exactly.
And that could lead to some issues, except for the end of Cedar Bay Road, of course, which has got a little bit more than 66 feet. So thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. And just to council, with regards to Councillor Wells' one question, with regards to numbers of respondents for all these questions. If you would like that information, please contact via email CAO Louis, and he'll make sure that that's sent to everyone. I have Councillor Beauregard next.
Through your worship to Mr. Hack, thank you for the presentation. In the future, would you be able to combine the data that's currently in the 5-point scale for the questions that are on a 5-point scale for significant level? I'm just wondering if we can maybe turn that into a 3-point scale. It'd be interesting to see it from that perspective.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Through you, Worship. Yeah, no, what we can do is, obviously we can't actually reduce the categories from 5 to 3. What we can do is organize the results to include, for example, the significant and the very significant together, right? And that reduces you by 1 category. So as long as we present it based on what people have said, yes, we could see whether we could do that.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, take the data and combine them. And then I wonder if it'd be possible to do the same thing with those questions that regard to sell options. There's 2 questions there. One's the partial sale and the other one's just sell road allowance completely. I'm wondering maybe if you can show the data with those 2 combined, what that would maybe look like, because then that gives us an idea as to the selling mentality. So that's one other one. If there are any open-ended questions, will we be able to see the raw data on those questions?
Yes, there are open-ended questions, and we spent quite a bit of time to get it to this point of sort of general summary. So it's a lot of information. It is, I think it's part of your public record if you choose it to be. And the only thing I would indicate is that when we get any results in conducting this survey, we made it very clear to everyone that none of their individual responses would be disaggregated, would be publicly available. So I would just need to make sure that what we provided you in terms of things like an open-ended questions are exactly that, just the written open-ended responses without any means by which you could indicate who might have been saying that. It's just
Okay.
to people's privacy.
Okay. And my last one is more of a comment. In reading the graphs, I was having troubles deciphering because of the color of the charts. I was having a hard time deciphering which corresponded with what option. So I'm just wondering, and I'm just asking, maybe in the future, if you can maybe show a better contrast in the color scheme, that would be much appreciated.
No, absolutely. It was a younger colleague with better eyesight than I as well. So yeah, I need to, as you heard my comment, I think we need to just simplify it and give a bit more color. In fact, we are obligated, and I think you may know this, obviously, to when we do write a report, to do so with the accessibility lens on. So we have to. There will be changes to those.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, to John. John, when you do what Councillor Beauregard was asking about putting some of those either sell or partial sale together, will we still have access to the graph that actually splits those out? Because I think I'm not for putting those together. I don't know what that's going to tell us. I want to know those two things separate. So as long as we have that graph that we have seen tonight, I can live with any other graph you're going to come up by combining those. But
okay, well, through you, Your Worship, if I may, just to confirm, I think if council is okay with it, leave it with me just to consider the best way to address these particulars, because I understand what Councillor Beauregard is asking for, and I understand what you're asking for. And the other thing that we're all aware of, I think, when you look at this presentation, is graphs work to a point, but there's a lot of information, and to get to the issue of possible sale, we might just want to use numbers and text and just actually indicate that it was 5% or 3% of people that expressed an interest. It's probably the quickest and easiest way to convey the information. So I will work on doing that.
good. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walls, did you have another question, or is that your hand still up?
Yes, Councillor Bodnar prompted a question from me on this one here.
Thanks, go ahead.
Through you to Jonathan, I would like the data to see what's behind these graphs. The other thing is just a general comment in regards to the graphs themselves. When one looks at them, one would see that, or could interpret them as saying we don't, as a city, have a problem there. Everything was, the largest thing was insignificant throughout all of those graphs, and that jumps out and stands out that it could be perceived that we are not looking at anything of a significant importance. But I beg to differ on that, because it's my phone that rings. It's me and Councillor Bodnar that get all the phone calls during the summer regarding all of those issues that we see there. So to me, and I'm sure to Mr. Bodnar and the residents in this area, it is a significant issue.
And if I, through you, Your Worship, I just want to offer my complete agreement. There is work to be done to improve the situation, and when we come time to write a report, we wanted to give you just a sweeping picture of everything that had been reported. But you're absolutely right, and you may see us put the magnifying glass in terms of how we present this over those areas where there is a level of dissatisfaction, as opposed to reporting just insignificant. But I think it's important that, again, maybe we go from graphs to some useful tables that can just set the picture very clearly, and then get down to the areas where there are concerns. I think you can see from almost every graph we put forward, in terms of where the weight of the concerns were, it was over on that eastern side. It was Wildwood, Pleasant Beach. That's not a surprise to anybody. But there are other issues that that are identified in the survey as well. So we will focus on those and not just make it appear like overall there is a level of insignificance that means you shouldn't do anything. That's not what we're trying to convey.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, seeing no further hands up, I'll thank Jonathan for coming out tonight. We look forward to his next trip back to us with more information. And as I said earlier, for those counselors that want the detailed numbers of respondents, please let CAO Louis know, and he'll make sure that those get to you. Great, thank you again, Jonathan.
Thank you.
There are no delegations this evening. Get into the mayor's report now. The province continues in a shutdown position as described in the Keeping Ontario Safe and Open framework. This shutdown includes a stay-at-home order and restrictions on numbers of retail customers in a store, cancels sit-down dining inside and out, as well as the cancellation of sporting activities and personal care services, all in an effort to control the number of cases of COVID-19 in our communities. Our beaches, marina, and boat ramp are closed as per the provincial orders. Playgrounds, trails, and parks are open for outdoor exercise. At the city, we will continue to serve residents by appointment. In-person appointments will be scheduled for essential and time-sensitive services. Where possible, services will be provided through remote means. To access city services, please call our customer service representative team at 905-835-2900. We emphasize the need for social distancing, hand washing, and face coverings where you can't social distance, and where required by the region and Ontario's face covering bylaws. Currently, individuals 60 years of age or older, or designated in an eligible group, can register to receive a vaccine by going to the Government of Ontario website to book an appointment. Or you can call 1-888-999-6488. That's 888-999-6488. Individuals over 40 can book an appointment for the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine through participating pharmacies. And in Port Colborne, Beaujol's Pharmacy is one of those pharmacies that are offering that. I ask that you please be patient and kind when speaking with staff, and we will keep you informed of any new information as we receive those from either the province or the region of Niagara. This time, I'd like to take a moment to recognize a former employee of the City of Port Colborne who recently retired from the town of Fort Erie. Joanne Ferraccioli started working for the City of Port Colborne in September of 2008 as our Health Services Coordinator. Joanne worked tirelessly over the years helping to bring family physicians to our community. She was a liaison to bring many services right to Port Colborne, such as Pathstone Mental Health, Caring for My COPD community program, and our ongoing memory clinic. She was a champion for Rural Medicine Week, sponsored by the Rural Ontario Medical Program, which brought first-year medical students to Port Colborne to show them the value of being a family doctor and living in a rural community. Several of these students have returned to Niagara to start their practices. Joanne was an advisor during changes to the healthcare system, being able to explain the differences in models for healthcare, and her inside knowledge of this system was invaluable. While she was working for the city, Joanne went on a secondment with the Niagara Health System, working on a special project, and she subsequently was offered employment in her hometown of Fort Erie, which she took. But we were fortunate to reach an agreement with Fort Erie to have Joanne continue to provide us with her guidance. Joanne has now decided that retirement is the right direction for her, and we wish her all the best. Joanne, I know you're home after a medical issue, but we do thank you, and we thank you for all the years of dedicated service to the citizens of Port Colborne, and quite frankly, with the agreement we have with Fort Erie, it worked very well, and Port Colborne has done very well by increasing the number of doctors we have here, and the family health teams that we've had created within the City of Port Colborne in conjunction with our partnership with Fort Erie is doing wonders for the care of our citizens here. So again, Joanne, please enjoy those retirement years, and we wish you well. I would also like to take a moment to recognize another current employee of the city, Gary Long, our Manager of Strategic Initiatives. This year, the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators is recognizing Gary for his 10 years of municipal service on a management capacity. Although Gary has been with us just under 1 year, his ongoing support of the municipal profession and the part he plays in helping to make CAMA, C-A-M-A, the leading organization in fostering and sustaining municipal excellence is truly admirable. We look forward to continue to work with Gary and appreciate the leadership he provides to our staff and our organization as a whole. And again, Gary, thank you very much, and we are so happy that CAMA was able to recognize you this year. And we know that the pin that's normally given has been already sent to you via the mail. On Wednesday, we will lower the flags throughout the city in recognition of the National Day of Mourning, April the 28th of 2021. This is a day to reflect, remember, and pay our respects to the thousands of workers who have died or been injured on the job and to the families they have left behind. When you leave for work each day, you and your family expect you to return safely, and it's the responsibility of every employer and every worker to ensure this happens. Health and safety is the top priority for the City of Port Colborne, and we ask all employers within the city to ensure it continues to be their top priority also. Today, as we remember, we renew our commitment to the promotion of healthy and safe workplaces and the prevention of future fatalities. On May 1st, we'll be recognizing Doctors' Day, celebrated across the province each May the 1st, to recognize Ontario's 30,000 doctors and their commitment to improving the health of all patients. Every day, more than 350,000 patients across Ontario are treated and cared for by doctors who are working together to provide high-quality care. In Port Colborne, there is a committed team of doctors who work tirelessly, ensuring our residents receive the services and care they need in our community. It's been a year since this global pandemic has impacted us, and our healthcare workers have taken on the extra burden of fighting COVID-19 on the front lines. They've sacrificed spending time with family and loved ones to ensure Niagara residents continue to stay healthy. On behalf of City Council and staff, thank you to our doctors, nurses, and all frontline healthcare workers. We appreciate and are so grateful for everything you have done and continue to do. It's time to shape the next 10 years of conservation in Niagara. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is developing a new strategic plan and would like to invite the members of our communities to get involved by participating in the process. A public survey link can be found on the homepage of the Niagara Region's website or by visiting getinvolvednpca.ca. That's getinvolvednpca.ca. This new strategic plan begins with a fresh approach towards achieving a shared vision. A representative team of staff experts from various departments are leading the way by working together to inform, develop, and implement the strategic planning process. The NPC staff and board of directors, of which I am a member, are now looking for public input to develop a common vision for conservation in Niagara through these future strategic priorities. So get involved and have your say by completing the survey before May the 6th of this year. That's it for the mayor's report. Any questions on that? Oh, Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to echo what you were saying about Joanne virtually. I think we were extremely fortunate to have Joanne join us. And I certainly, along with a number of other councillors, served on that committee for a lot of years. And I honestly believe we would not be where we are right now without Joanne's insight and her. She was always involved with everything with the province, and I think it gave us a leg up on, getting certain things for the city. So kudos to her, and I'd like to thank her for the years she spent with us. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Bodner. Okay, we'll move on to the regional councillors report. Councillor Butters, welcome. There we are.
Hi, Mayor Steele. Hi, everyone. How are you all?
Thanks. Very well, Barb.
Good. So I can be brief here tonight, I think. couple of important things happened at last Thursday's council meeting. I'm not sure how many of you were following the bouncing ball of the anti-lockdown protests that were happening in St. Catharines and then again in Niagara Falls. But at last Thursday's special meeting, there was a motion that was made that directed Chair Bradley to have the Integrity Commissioner investigate whether or not Councillor Bylsma's participation in the anti-lockdown protest that happened in St. Catharines was in breach of the Code of Conduct. So pending the outcome of that investigation, we could receive recommendations from the Integrity Commissioner and decide what action may be taken at that point. I requested a recorded vote on that motion, and I can tell you that all but one person voted in favor of it, and it was carried. The second motion that was made on that meeting, basically the gist of it was that councillors were reaffirming our commitment to the Code of Conduct and the when we're sworn in, we make that oath that we're going to uphold that. Again, I requested a recorded vote, and again, all but one voted in favor, and that motion was carried. So I don't know if any of you received phone calls about that situation. I know I received quite a few emails and phone calls regarding that whole piece. I think when we have provincial stay-at-home orders and most of us are trying to do the right thing, in this COVID world to keep ourselves and our families and our friends and our neighbors safe, it really flies in the face of that when you see others who aren't. And it's not okay with any of us. It's certainly not okay with me. And we're dealing with it at the region in the proper procedure and the best way that we can at this point. So the other thing I would like to raise is the Niagara Impact Awards are opened up. You can it is to recognize a community member or a business that has made an impact on life in Niagara, and we all know it's been a crazy year. So residents are encouraged to nominate individuals, businesses, or nonprofit organizations who have gone above and beyond to really help make living in Niagara a little bit better for others during this past year. So you have till May 21st at 4 o'clock to make your nomination. And the award winners will be announced at the Regional Council meeting of June 24th. So you can go to niagararegion.ca and nominate somebody that you think is deserving. And if I could just add my my very best wishes and my really sincere thanks to Joanne Ferriccioli. She's an amazing person and has done so much for so many. Enjoy your retirement, Joanne. You've earned it and you deserve it, and God bless you. And with that, I'm done. And I can take questions back for whoever may have one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Any questions to the regional councillor? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Barb. Just wanted a few thank yous here. One to you for right on time and right on schedule. Region was sweeping Main Street. I sure would love to get an agreement with the city so that it can be swept more than the beginning of the year and the end of the year, but that's another fish to fry on another day. As well, regional staff showed up here on Main Street, met with Rosedale Towers owner, and they worked through the whole issue of a barricade there at that corner of Elm and Main to the satisfaction of the owner. They did an excellent job. I was told, I wasn't able to be there that day, an excellent job of explaining it to everyone, and everyone there was pleased. So thank you. And if you could take that back to those that you dealt with, both those issues cleaned up excellently. Similarly, a police issue and yours and the mayor's comment of moving on that on the west side here of the city. Appreciate that. Also should weigh in on your comments and Ron's on Joanne, not only an outside of the box person, one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet, but she personifies to me how one person can make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And she did it for us. So I appreciate you making that comment, Barb, and Ron, and to the mayor. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you,
You're
Councillor.
welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Great. Any further questions? Okay. Thanks, Barb. Appreciate it. We'll see you around the region via Zoom.
Yes, sir.
Take care. We are now on to staff remarks. Staff in here? Anybody here have any? CO? Nothing? Staff online, if you just want to bring your picture up, if any of the staff have anything for council. I don't see any at this time. Great, thank you. I'm going to get on to councillors' remarks. I'm going to start with Councillor Demary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would appreciate it if we could have staff just do a quick recap of how people would get the beach access passes and where they would call, just what the procedure is, just to make it very clear.
Beach access pass?
Yeah, Brian?
Staff report, I think, is lifted.
That is actually coming forward this evening, Councillor Demary, under the staff report, so can we wait till then?
Sure can, that's just perfect. That's all I had to ask, thank you.
Good, thank you, Councillor Demary. Councillor Bruno.
All answered during the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No concern, but just one comment. I got an email a couple of days ago from a resident on Homewood Avenue, and she passed on her many thanks to the city of Port Colborne, specifically Mr. Shipakowski and operations for the sidewalk repair that was done on her property that she brought up last year. She says the contractors that did the actual job were very polite, very thorough, and they did a tremendous job. And also down the street, also the other repairs that was on the street. I really can't give too much credit to the director, Cal Manutu, because he just got here, but I'll give him half a credit for it. But thank you very much, operations. I really appreciate it. It's nice to get something positive emails from the residents other than complaints and that. But this woman, gave it from her heart. So thank you again.
Good stuff. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
I have no remarks at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Most of it were taken care of by staff, but through you to the CAO, are you going to mention, or do we have anything in the agenda that's going to let people know we have a new chief building official?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, it's actually not, there is a bylaw. There's no
Yes.
staff report. So we are
Right.
appointing some summer bylaw enforcement officers like we do from time to time. We're also appointing a new chief building official that starts on May 3rd, Monday, May 3rd. It is reporting to the acting director of legislative services, which is our city clerk. And so this is a vacant position, been vacant since about November. At previous council meetings, I have reported that we've had a variety of sort of different solutions to help us through the period of time while we conducted a thorough recruitment, interviewed a whole bunch of candidates, and finally got to one that was our number one and made a job offer. That person needed some time to wind up their employment elsewhere and will start on May 3rd. In the meantime, we've had help from Wainfleet, we've had help from Pelham, we've had help from our current acting CBO, who is a retiree, who came on board to help us through. And that gentleman, Tony, is going to help us for a couple of weeks of transition too. So you'll still see Tony on email and around town, making sure that we're, number one, clearing any backlog of inspections and permit approval, and number two, showing our new chief building official the ropes. And if you want to know the name of the new chief building official, I can tell you by finding it right here. Just bear with me. John Taylor, Monday, May 3rd.
Counselor?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's what I wanted to hear, especially the part about us keeping the current CBO, Tony, on just to clear any backlogs. I think it's important for people trying to get building permits. This is what I would imagine would be a busy time of year with people trying to get permits to do things this summer. So I think it was a really great idea to keep them on there, just till we get through anything that that would seem to be a backup in our system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Wells?
Thank you, Worship. I have no remarks tonight. Everything is being worked on throughout the week, and since we've had back-to-back meetings, or week-to-week meetings, it's limited to the number of responses I've been seeing or issues I've been seeing. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Clayliff?
I just had one question through you, Mr. Mayor, it's regarding the beach. I just want to add, I've had a couple questions from people regarding the signage. I know that we had a report saying that there would be signage being posted with the no trespassing at the ends of the beaches. I've heard from a couple of the different beaches asking when that's going to happen. And I said I would try to get a firm response tonight. Do we have a date when this will be completed by?
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I don't have a firm date, but I can tell you that we have started, and so that the residents should be seeing signs going up shortly. We are finishing up all of our locates, and then we're going to be putting in the poles, so you'll see those go up shortly, and then the signs on top of those ones. So it is a three-step process, but we are well in our way, and we have most of the locates completed.
Through you again, Mr. Kalamudu, could I ask you, I've had a couple people ask me, should they be putting up their own signs? And I've kind of discouraged it. I said they would be coming through the city. I don't know do we encourage are people, is it okay for them to put up their own signs? I didn't really know. I said that I knew there were signs coming, so I thought that they should wait and see.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I know that there's no need for them to put up the other signs. We put up the official signs that bylaws tells us which ones to use. We get them created so they are fairly sturdy. Unfortunately, sometimes they are acquired by others, by residents and others, but we will replace them as required, and we're well on our way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll tell them that. Good.
Thank you, Counselor. And it's funny who does acquire our signs. There was a house for sale not long ago, and in the photographs of the house in their basement was a welcome to Port Colborne sign. That was pretty comical. Counselor Dance, you're next.
Better last than not at all, right? I guess, Chris, I should have mentioned this to you earlier, but if you're on the Kalali Mellenby side of things there, right when you come across that little weird bridge, there was an electrical pole that was taken down in an accident back in January, and it's a concrete pole. It's pretty much taken off close to ground level. It's been a few months, and definitely before you got here. I don't know if it's a Seaway issue or if it's a city issue, but it's right in front of the Seaway property and it's confusing to me. Mellenby Kalali East, right at the curve. It's the last pole that would have been there, and it's kind of been sitting like that for a few months. It's all taped up. I'm sure it's a safe thing that's going on, but and I honestly don't know whose it would be. If you could look into that, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Kawamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will definitely be looking into it. We do have it is on order, so we do have our supplier manufacturing it, so it should be done shortly. So they're just a little bit low on supplies right now with all the COVID happening. So there has been a few delays, but we will definitely take care of that. Like I said, it's in the process.
Super. And just one last thank you. That Canal Bank sign, it looks pretty good. I think we have to change all the signs in the city of Port Colborne now, so they all look as good as that one that you guys recently put up. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm done.
No, that's good. Thank you. Consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Item 7.2. I have item 7.2. Bear with me, I'll pull this up. The council approved delegating authority to the Director of Public Works to reduce provisions 3.5.2 and 3.1.1E of bylaw 1117648 1 to 3.0 meters and 1.0 meters respectively for the next 12 months. That the Director of Public Works be directed to analyze best management practices and bring a draft revision of said bylaw to council by the end of December 2021. And that council grant relief from the specific provisions of the bylaw affecting Committee of Adjustment applications A03-21-PC, A05-21-PC, A08-21-PC, and B02-21-PC. That's moved by Councillor Wells and Beauregard. I'll start off with Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Director Kalamuto. Chris, I noted you have a 12-month period in there. Is that, can that be changed? Is there any reason why you have 12 months other than to give you sufficient time to come back?
Mr. Kalamoto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it is to give us sufficient time to take a look at the best management practices and report back before the end of December. And if there are any delays or what have you in those, it just gives a slightly small cushion for that. So to the councillor, that is exactly what it's for.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship to, I'm not sure if Mr. Kustik's with us, as he's the author of the report, or Mr. Kalamoto, whoever would like to answer this question. In the report, it's recommended that application A09-21-PC not be granted the relief that it was sought after. So I'm asking, what can be done in order for the Public Works Department to approve said application?
Mr. Kostick?
Through the mayor to Councillor Beauregard. There are not many options for that property. One option that has been identified is to keep the one entrance, the west entrance on the front, and move the east entrance to the rear of the building to come off of Mitchell Street.
Councillor?
Thank you. I also would like to say thank you for drafting this report in a timely manner as you did. It did require a lot of time, I believe. Through your worship, I would like to propose an amendment to the motion.
Yep.
It would be to go with the option that Mr. Kostick stated, splitting the entrances with the west entrance remaining in the front and being pushed to 1 meter offset from the west property line and 3 meters wide, as per our lowered minimums recommended in the report, and the east entrance being moved to the rear of Mitchell Street at 1 meter offset and from the north property line at 3 meters wide. And that would be it.
Okay, can you give me the number to that application for this motion, please?
A09-21-PC.
You have that, Madam Clerk? Okay. So there is an amendment on the floor to the motion. I need a seconder to that amendment. Councillor Wells. Questions to the amendment? Councillor Bruno, is your hand still up or do you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
I was presuming that Mr. Kostick was going to speak to that, and I was just going to round out Councillor Beauregard's reason for putting that in during the day today. Brian's come up with a couple options, and one is the least onerous to the applicant and does not require a new hearing or a new fee. So I just wanted to add that background. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodnar.
I think I just had my question answered because people on the committee certainly will have more knowledge of this than we have. So is there going to be a little explanation on this? Then I'd be great. Thanks.
Councillor Bodnar, you're looking for a further explanation?
Well, I just wondered whether Mr. Kostick was going to speak to this, or is it just what we read on the paper?
Well, in essence, what we have here is the amendment to include another application that the Committee of Adjustment dealt with. So they've outlined the parameters with regards to the entrances to that property on Mitchell Street. I could have Mr. Kostick comment on it, but I think it's whether we as a council want to include that in with the main motion. Is there a specific question you have to Mr. Kostick, or is that okay?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So basically on the amendment, folks, any further questions on the amendment? Everybody understands the amendment? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we're back to the motion as amended. Any further questions on the main motion? I had Councillor Bagu next on my list, but any further questions on that? Councillor Bagu, anything further?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.3, that Planning and Development Department Report 2021-136 be received and that the official plan amendment attached as Appendix A to Planning and Development Report 2021-136 be approved, and that the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix B to Planning and Development Report 2021-136 be approved, and that planning staff be directed to circulate the notice of adoption and passing in accordance with the Planning Act. And we have Mr. Schultz online tonight. I have Councillors Wells and Bagu moving that. I'll start off with Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Schultz and I have been exchanging emails today, and we've been debating some of the issues. I have some concerns in regards to that, and with regards to the actual buffer zone, the inclusion of the 9 meters in the buffer zone. The requirement by the ministry is 20 meters, and I know that the intent is to use the side yard of the lot in addition to the 9 meter right away that we have there. But it's my understanding, and my concerns is that it does not provide us an equal separation distance as required by D6. D6, the Ministry of the Environment's requirements, and can be interpreted in different ways, but my interpretation is that it's property line to property line, unless there is a significant and approved Ministry of the Environment mitigation measure for preventing any off-site impacts, and their distance is 20 meters. The 9 meters is not sufficient between the property lines to prevent that. I know a side setback of 15 meters takes it up to 24 meters, but that puts the emission air property right or the emission source right up on that property line separation distance. So I'm concerned about that, and I'm also in my communications with Mr. Schultz. The other concern is there is a definite distinction between the Ministry of the Environment's definition of Class 1 industries and our zoning bylaw light industrial. There's a significant difference between those two. For example, the ministry class 1, which was stated by the region to be a requirement, they insist that the criterion there is that there's no operating of that site after daytime, so that's a sort of an example of what I think should be considered when we look at the impacts that could be given to the local residents there. So I'll wait to hear if there's any other comments on this, but I think we need to take a look at this a little bit more.
Thank you, Councillor. Just 1 second. Okay, just talking to the clerk here. Mr. Schultz, I know you spoke to the landowner with regards to an amendment. I think that may answer some of the questions. Do you want to bring that forward and let council hear that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I did have a conversation with the regional planner. And for those who don't know, there is a memorandum of understanding between the region and the lower tier municipalities. For when a Planning Act application comes in, the region reviews from a provincial perspective. So they review all provincial policies, including the D6 guidelines, as well as the regional policies in their official plan. So when this application came in, the regional planner did her review and determined that the 20-meter setback would be the one that was in play. I did have a conversation regarding the 9-meter buffer in between the properties, in between the Fontaine property and the nearby residential properties. And she agreed that the 9-meter buffer plus the 15-meter buffer was adequate to meet that D6 guideline. Basically, the D6 guideline does allow for site-specific zoning to include the on-site buffer. So that would be the residential property line to the actual use on the property, which would in this case be the warehouse or the building being built. So when I had my conversation with Brittany, she did not have any objections to that because the zoning is being site-specifically zoned to the use, except for the uses that were removed from that. Now, going on to the uses that were removed, those were the ones that she found were the most, I guess, in non-conformance with the D6. And those were the ones that she recommended to be removed from the zoning. So that's what I have from there. I'd be happy to answer any other questions or try my best, at least from a city perspective, for the regional comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Do you have that list there of those that were removed? Do you have that handy?
Yep. So through the bylaw amendment, we did remove, it was a contractor's yard, motor vehicle repair garage, cannabis production facility, and adult entertainment oriented establishment.
Okay. Just for council's information there. Councillor Wells, you're set. I can always come back to you. You're set for now?
I'm set for now. Just to respond to those industries or those businesses that we've identified to be excluded. One other one, which is there is the transport depot, which would operate or could operate 24/7, 7 days a week. That is definitely one that would not meet the criteria of a class 1 industry as required by the D6 guidelines. So we may want to have that considered as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. David? Mr. Schultz, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, I will add that if council does choose to do that, that is at the will of them, and they can add that to the amendment if they'd like.
Great, thank you. I've got Councillor Baggy next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. if I'm not mistaken, through you, Mr. Mayor, we just had the planning meeting for this last Monday. And yet it comes to council today within 1 week. Usually things take a lot longer to be done in this city. I don't, just being on council for the two years. I'm a little skeptical about passing this because I think it's coming up too fast. And just last Monday when we had the planning meeting, the city-owned property was getting samples, the soil samples. I'd like to see the results of that. That's one of the questions I'd like to see answers actually before I vote to pass this. And the other one was probably one of the other councilors, Mr. Schultz suggested that staff be directed to circulate a preliminary site plan and take into consideration comments from the members of the public that have objected to the whole proposal or some of the proposals. Actually, I would ask that that be completed and also for council to get copied on it. So all us councilors also have a preliminary site plan. But even with the last meeting, without a site plan, I was somewhat confused about where this is going, where the actual stuff was all going here. And it just seemed like it wasn't thorough enough. Planting of the trees near the 9 meters and stuff like that. Councilor Wells is concerned about the ditching. And so as of right now, Mr. Mayor, if we could have staff be directed to circulate that preliminary site plan, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Schultz, when does site plan come back to council normally in a process like this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't received the preliminary site plan for this property. If we did receive one, I would circulate it to council, but we don't have one at this time.
But normally during this process, is the site plan is sometimes it does come forward, sometimes it doesn't. Is that correct?
For the most part, site plan control is typically handled just in the planning division alone. We do circulate it to council when they do come in. And then I believe council has the ability to take the approval authority back from the director of planning.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bagu?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I got.
Great, thank you. Councillor Clayloff?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Dave, could I please ask you, was there an amendment to the building height? I can't remember if I saw that, but I thought I saw it now with this last report that came through. Was there an amendment made to the building height?
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Clayliff. There was a request from Mr. Fontaine, I believe it came in today, regarding the building height. Originally, staff were directed to rezone the property from the existing standpoint, so it would be urban residential to industrial / employment, and switching from residential development to light industrial. There weren't any special provisions requested at that time because for the most part, staff didn't know what the building would look like or anything like that. So I believe at the public meeting, Mr. Fontaine did mention the building height would be higher than what is permitted in the zoning for the light industrial zone. So Mr. Fontaine has now requested that council add that as part of the amendment to allow the building height to be increased.
So Mr. Schultz, this amendment just came in today to have the building height increased. So was it made public? Was that put out to the people that were out that were to get this information prior to this decision from the meeting? Did they receive the information regarding the height increase?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Clayliff. It was included as part of the addendum package, to my knowledge, to the council agenda, but it was just a delegation that came in. It wasn't a formal request, essentially. It's essentially a delegation that is requesting council to make that change.
I'll have the Madam Clerk jump in here, please. Madam Clerk?
Yes, through the chair. The request came in this afternoon and it is in your delegation packages, so the document is available for the public, but has not been circulated in any formal request or public notice.
I guess, thank you, Madam Clerk. I feel the same as Councillor Bagu. I just think that this has happened so quickly, and to know that an amendment came in this afternoon, I thought there were deadlines and there were procedures where these things had to be shared before they could be approved. So I am not in favor of approving this tonight. I think that we need to go back and look at it a little bit closer. Thank you.
Okay, Council, I just want to confirm this. This is not an amendment that's been added to this. This is an ask from the proponent that we change the height for the building. So the staff have not amended this. And this happens a lot when these meetings come up, that things are changed or asked to be changed, whether it might be by council or by proponents or even opponents of something. So that can happen a lot. So this is just an ask, it's not an amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I understand that. No, I understand that staff didn't change it, but I just think that that was a question that was raised at that meeting and it was discussed. And, I guess I have concerns that, that there are still questions being raised. We had another piece come in tonight, and I just want to make sure that everybody's happy with the results. I thought that Mr. Fontaine handled it very well. He answered their questions. He was willing to do a lot of what they wanted. I just want to be sure that they've had all of their questions that they had put forward answered before we move forward with making a decision on this.
Correct. So if we wanted to accept the building height offered by the proponent, then council would have to amend what we've done here tonight to actually do that. So all he's done is asked for this. Doesn't mean you have to give it, but he has asked for it. So unless there's an amendment made, I just don't want to confuse people by using the terms amendment when we haven't had an amendment yet that has not been put on the floor. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear with that. Okay. I have Councillor Demary next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm hearing a lot of hesitation from council members, and that does concern me. We also have a letter from Melissa Bigford that is entered as a delegation piece that lays out some very specific questions that do require answering. I know that there are a lot of community members waiting for the answers to these questions as well. And I don't know if staff is prepared to go through each of the questions tonight and give detailed answers on it, very specific detailed answers, or should this matter really move on to the next meeting? That's what I'm really thinking at this point, is that we should consider doing that. I just would like to know if there is any problem in doing that. Is that going to hold up a process to a point where it causes someone undue hardship? Because if not, I would like to see this move to the next meeting.
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's in planning perspective. We don't. It doesn't bother us when this is coming back to council. I know Mr. Fontaine may have other things to say about that, but I don't have anything to add on that.
Councillor?
Well, considering that, then I would move that this matter be moved over into the next meeting.
So you want to defer this to our next council meeting?
Yes, and during that time, though, I would like to have staff address each of the questions from Melissa Bigford's entry so that they can get that all back to her and make sure that she's satisfied with those answers.
Just 1 second, Councillor. Sorry, I was just confirming the date of the next meeting.
Okay.
So we have a motion to defer to May 10th, and that the questions with regards to the delegation of Melissa Bigford be answered by planning staff. Do I have a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Wells. There is no debate on deferral. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor to defer? Against deferring? Okay, that's carried. Thank you, Council.
Thank
you. Item 7.4. Public Works Department Report 2021-134 be received. That the 2021 storm sewer rates are set out on page 3 of the Public Works Department Report 2021-134 be approved. That Council approve moving forward with option 3 as set out in the Appendix B to Public Works Department Report 2021-134. I have Councillors Bodner and Councillor Bruno to move that, or I apologize. Councillor Wells and Councillor Bruno to move that. I'm going to go to Councillor Wells first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question. I don't know if, Director Bowles may be able to answer this one here. The rate is identified in a chart, and that chart identifies heavy industrial ratepayers on that as being about $550 for the year. My question is, Port Colborne quarries out of Pit 1 contribute an extensive amount of water. Actually, they're allowed to put in 6.6 million liters per day of water into the storm sewer. My question is, are they only charged $550 for the year for that volume of water, that loading on the sewer system? To me, that would seem to be a little bit unfair to the rest of the ratepayers.
Mr. Bowles?
Through the mayor to council, I don't have the specific property and which ones are in each category, but I think you bring up a fair point that the model is a flat fee model, and council voted for a flat fee model a couple of years ago when this was set in. And it is possible that there are individuals and there's corporations, commercial and industrial, that are within the area that is receiving the fee that use or are impacting water usage and storm sewer differently based on the amount of square footage that they may have covered by parking lot or any number of factors. It is something that if council were to direct us, we could go back and take a look at other ways of assessing the fee in future years.
Councillor?
Again, I just think it's, if that is the case and it's unfair, and there is one or two maybe industrial locations that are contributing the lion's share to it, the burden is passed on to the taxpayers. And I just think that's just unfair. I'm not against going ahead with the motion to set the rates tonight, but I do think that we need to put in the stipulations there in regards to being either for those residents that are on a drainage system. I know the report says that all the drainage systems are connected up to the storm sewer systems, which are connected up to that, and everything is connected to everything and ends up back in the lake. But those drainage systems are separate from the storm sewers for the most part, and specifically or a large content of that is in Ward 4. So I do think that we do have to have some options within that for parties that are included in the flat rate system to be either to opt out or to be considered or requested to be considered in a different manner. So anyway, that's my position at this point. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Council was gracious enough to grant those of us who had some minor tweaking or issues with the report in its current state. I agree with Councillor Wells that we need to move on. I since had discussions with Mr. Bowles. Mr. Colamoto and I made some valiant attempts over the last 30 days, but by the time we got mapping and tried to get our schedules together, we had a lot of email conversations, but we weren't able to really get a voice-to-voice map in front of each one of us. I have, I would like to, as I think Councillor Wells knows, we've had some conversations about issues in his area and realization of the potential to get those storm sewers in. To that end, I would like to move forward with the report to get the billing out and help Mr. Bowles out. But I'm wondering if the CAO on behalf of Chris and Brian could speak to the fact that we had a discussion, and if it's okay with the three, and with council that the ability to still amend and change for these areas still in dispute, we could all sit down and look at these drawings even in a Zoom meeting. And to that end, I'd like to hold our feet to the fire too, and staff, to not elongate this any longer if possible. And I propose that one way or another, we on these fringe properties come to an agreement that we get this sorted in the next 60 days. I don't know if Mr. Louis could speak to that.
Mr. Louis?
Sure, thanks through your worship to Councillor Bruno. I think that's a good idea. You know, how exactly the program is administered and who exactly is on the storm water surcharge or fee and who exactly is on a drainage invoice and who's serviced by the existing system and, you know, the future to be built system and so on are all engineering questions. And I'm not expert enough to be able to answer those. But the issue that's before us is we have a billing question, and this system was supported in principle by supported in fact by the previous council, in principle by this council. We need to arrive at some kind of a fee structure in order to proceed with our 2021 billing and beyond. We always predicated the system on the sort of concept that if somebody's being billed who shouldn't be billed, we'll arrange to get them a refund. We'll arrange to make sure that they're compensated. And if somebody is excluded from the system and eventually we learn that through the engineering process they should be included, we won't bill them retroactively unless the treasurer wants to tell me that I'm wrong about that. So I think it's a can't lose for the resident. If we're charging them incorrectly, we'll get them their refund. If we're putting them on, we'll put them on at a certain date forward, not backwards, retroactively. So to approve this tonight, but with the staff obligation that we can get down to the task of tinkering with the boundaries and making sure that the right people who are in the stormwater network are paying for the stormwater network. To commit to that, we can absolutely do that and do it over the next 2 months as the council member has suggested. So the short answer is yes.
Great, thank you. Councillor?
Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had put my hand up because I wasn't sure what I was going to hear from the CAO. And, but I like what I heard. I think Councillor Bruno and Councillor Wells have done a lot of work. We're, 98% there? And it's time to clean it up, get it done. So I've heard what I want to hear. I'm good with it. Thank you. That's
Great.
it.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried, Council. Next is item 7.6, the Corporate Services Department Report 2021-132, subject 2021 beach operations update be received for information. I have Councillors Bodnar and Bruno moving this. I'm going to start with Councillor Bodnar. Before I go there, I do have Councillor Demary on the list already because she brought this up earlier. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just bringing up what I need here. Give me a second. So I was concerned, maybe like Councillor Demary, but I'll say what I want to say and then she'll chime in. But certainly in our area, we have lots of renters that, and whether they're renting with the COVID situation, we don't know, but they could be. And so I didn't see anything in there about how people that are renting property close to the beach and want to get to a pass, how are they going to do that?
Well, I apologize, Mr. Bowles.
Just waiting for the protocol. Through the mayor to council. I I think it was staff's perspective, and we stand to be corrected and can take direction and move fairly quickly if need be with this system that's coming in, that those that may be renting near Cedar Bay, Centennial Park there, would be in a house or location that they would be walking, not necessarily parking at the park. And the pass is only required to park at the park. So you can still walk to the park and you can still walk on the beach without a pass. You just need the pass to actually get into the parking lot. And certainly it was our thought when we were looking at this as a matter that that the fact that I guess it was our anticipation that people would not be driving maybe just down the street. They'd be walking down the street. But we certainly stand to be corrected and could make adjustments accordingly to accommodate if council thought that was required.
Okay, can I make a suggestion, Councillor Bodnar and Mr. Bowles? In conversation with Mayor Redekop of Fort Erie last Friday, we had our monthly mayor's meeting, and they are tweaking their pass that they have specifically in the Crystal Beach for Bay Beach. And they're making a few changes from what they learned last year because they went through this and had a pass where, whether it was an Airbnb or somebody's cottage that had friends using it or they rented it, there was a pass for guests. So maybe we could ask that you speak to your counterpart in Fort Erie and get an idea from them, because I think what they learned last year would probably be pretty similar to what we would have here in Port Colborne. The majority of the cottages that front the beach, those people would walk, but there are a number of cottages in the area that they may be driving because they're on a road that doesn't have, they're not on Cedar Bay Road or Vimy Road where they can easily walk. So maybe if you can bring that back, I think we could move forward with receiving this tonight, but if you can bring that back to council and let us know what you find with Fort Erie, and if that is going to bode well for Port Colborne, then just adopt it. I think we can give you that assurance that we would agree to that. Councillor Bodnar?
That's fine with me. We don't have to reinvent anything that someone else has been through. So.
Great, thank you. I have Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. When I read the report, it struck me that in the second item under purpose, we've talked so much about the past, and I think it's a great idea, the strategy behind it, and the logistics of how to do it. But under purpose, I'll read the last line. It basically says residents can register for their free seasonal participate pass. Now, I did note on the pass itself in the appendix that it doesn't reference the word seasonal, but I know there was a discussion at the time about this being a pass that we could have multiple uses of it. And since we are going through the exercise of getting people registered up, staff clearance, pass produced, mailed out, or picked up, I didn't want to limit the pass with that wording in the report that this was just a seasonal pass for the beaches, that we could expand the use of that. So I just wanted some clarity on this, that everything's been looked at when it's been lawyered up for the wording and everything, that it will include other uses yet to be defined. Through you to Mr. Bowles.
Mr. Bowles?
Through the mayor to council, I think when councilors and anybody watching or reviewing this report reads the back pass, you will find that the lawyers did a great job with the amount of language on the back. It was designed to be an annual pass that we'd be able to use in multiple locations. Once you register for your pass, you'll be able to keep it year to year. So that will be beneficial. I think the seasonal word there got a little away from us because normally the beach is open on a seasonal basis, and we could have done without the word seasonal in the report.
Councillor Bruno?
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Bowles. It's clarified.
Councillor Demary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, I don't know if this is Mr. Bowles, or if it's someone else, but I have received a few inquiries about the pass. Questions such as the website says you can, the social media had said that people can register online. They want to know, people want to know, is that an online fillable form, or do they actually have to, download something printed off and that sort of thing? So that's a question to be asked. When exactly will that portal open? What is the URL exactly? They want to know, is this a pass that will accommodate one vehicle, and if so, who can be in the vehicle? Can you bring an out of towner in with you? That sort of thing. And what do they need to be able to prove their address? That's the sort of questions that I'm getting. So maybe someone could make a statement to the particulars of how you qualify for the pass and how you actually get it. That would be very helpful.
Mr. Bowles?
Through the mayor to council, we start to outline that on page 2 of our report. On May 3rd, we'll go live on our website, as well as we'll have communication going out around being able to access it either by calling the Vale Health and Wellness Center or customer service at City Hall. So we'll be able to register you over the phone as well. You'll also be able to pick one up when we open up the beach, once the public health measures allow us to do that. Now, we also recognize that once you register, you still have to get a pass. So we will be prepared to mail these passes to individuals' houses going forward, or they can wait to pick them up once the stay-at-home order is complete. I think it's been assessed that picking up the beach pass is not necessarily an essential task right now, but certainly we can help everybody register via the phone or via the internet. I think as we outlined in our original plan, again, a household or any resident of the city can have a pass, and if they're in the car, the car will get in. So if they're driving in with somebody from a family member from Welland and the family member's driving, but they're in the car, that car will get in. Our technology is set up that we have a notes code that will be tracking the number of people that come in per car, because we know that may impact how we continue to operate the beach and how we operate the beach in future years. Right now, we charge a per car load, and that hasn't always been the case for the beach and may not always be the case after this season as well. So we will be tracking at that granular level, but we would encourage people if within a household that you could sign yourself up, sign everybody in the house up for them, because we hope to be able to expand the Participate Pass going forward, and having it could be a very useful thing.
Councillor Demary?
That's very good, thank you. And so the only proof they would need of who they are is their regular ID? Is that what you would accept, or do they need ID at all?
If you have your Participate Pass coming in, that's all we'll be looking for.
Okay, but when they apply for it, is it just given to anyone who just asks, or is there a proof of address needed?
Sorry, I follow you now. When you come and pick it up, you'll have to show proof of address. So that could be a piece of ID or if we're mailing it to you, we'll be mailing it to an address within the city.
That's fine. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kalala.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bowles. Just a quick question. I know we talked about this before. We have a couple bed and B&Bs in town who had approached me regarding when they have guests. And I know that we made arrangements for that to happen last year. Right now with the lockdown, I know it's not possible. I'm assuming very soon, hopefully, they will be able to have guests that will be able to access the beach. So going forward, it will be the same process as before. They will be allotted so many per their guest house or what they need, just to reassure them they will be available for them to give to their guests when they're staying, right?
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I think it was pointed out, and Councillor Bodnar did earlier, that we may have a misstep on that, and we're going to turn this over really quick to have a process for them, so that will work.
So I have been contacted by one of them already. So I said to them just to hold on and wait. While we were in the lockdown, nothing was happening. We would know soon. So just tell them to keep watch for it. And like I said, they were looking at the fact that they had some bookings, tentative, and until things are over, but they were already looking, people wanting to come to go to the beach, and they were just wanting reassurance that their guests would be allowed to when the lockdown ended. And I said, I'm sure that we'd be working with it. So I can tell them, yes, something will be coming out soon regarding that.
Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I'm taking direction that council is interested in that, and we are the answer is yes, and we're gonna turn something around to alleviate that concern.
Great.
ASAP.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Bruno. Or are you finished?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Bowles. Mr. Bowles, the last explanation with respect to the showing of the pass, am I correct? And your response was Port Colborne residents would show ID to pick up the pass at City Hall or at the beach. But going forward, if they use the beach, they would no longer have to prove their identity. They would just have to show the pass.
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, that was our intent of operation. We had a lot of conversations around that, I guess, the honesty of people with respect to the pass and using it themselves. Our preference is to roll it out under that model and see how that operates. We do have some mechanism because we will be tracking how often a pass is used, when it's used, and we can check the frequency that will give us an ability to indicate or ask somebody to potentially show ID if required, if it's being used an enormous amount or disproportionate compared to something else. But our original intent is to keep things simple, and if you show your pass, you'll get in.
Councillor?
I have some concerns about that because I don't know that the frequency of the use of the pass in any way denotes whether I'm from Port Colborne or not. In fact, I would argue that if you're from Port Colborne, you might use the pass a lot more. And if you're not going to use it, someone could give it to someone else, friend, out of towner, scalp it, God knows what. But the point being that then that frequency of use still doesn't denote whether they were a Port Colborne resident or not. And I think if at the outset you set out a system that it's not even a random check, I just think we open ourselves up for abuse. And counter to that, I worry the fact that we have rightfully, I think with the full support of council, limited the amount of out-of-town vehicles that we will take. I think that those out-of-town vehicles are the folks that we now know in reduced numbers will support this whole plan and get to the revenue numbers for which we can keep this alive for the citizens of Port Colborne free. So I'm very concerned that now this could eat in to the number of people who, and remember, there already is a limit on it. But if we don't even get that limit, I'd have to question whether out-of-towners are using a citizen's pass. I would like to see some more thought into that process. And like many things out there that are rules, they usually enforce them very tough at the beginning, like May 2-4 weekends with camping and drinking and all that stuff. And I think if we start with just that system, I'm worried that it opens up abuse. I'm not so sure that, unless I'm 16 or older, even or younger, I'm probably coming to the beach with my wallet or purse or a fanny pack or something with a piece of ID in it, my driver's license if I'm driving. And that, after all, is what this is all about, the driver in a car. If you're coming in a car and you don't want to bring your license down to the beach, you hide it under the mat and lock your car. But to just have it just the honor system, I don't think it. I think traffic's going to move a lot faster. Numbers will be down because of the controls. But then to blow it wide open with, I don't even have to pull out an ID, I'm very concerned. I'm just wondering if you could re-examine that. I don't know if other councillors share that concern. Thank you.
Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, from a staff perspective, we're happy to re-examine it. We were trying to keep it simple. I saw some faces from some counselors as you were bringing that up there. I don't know if that's an official vote. I don't think it is, but I think at least to start, we're going to take that as direction to require ID with the pass. And the simple try was appreciated, but the ID with the pass would be more appreciated.
Go ahead. That answer your question, Councilor Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mr. Bowles.
Perfect. Thank you. Councilor Wells?
Thank you, Worship. This would be directed through you to Director Bowles. In regards to your comment of issuing more than one pass per household, I think we have to set a limit to that. I hear the question in regards to a B&B and their guests and that, but again, if you issued 6 passes to a household, I would have to say there's some questions that have to be raised in regards to those passes. And I'm sure that you would find probably at least 4 of those given out to some out-of-town resident. So I think we have to take a look and examine exactly how many you were going to give to a household and set a limit on that. And that's my comments in regards to that. And I support the position or the comments of Councillor Bruno.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Wells. Director Bowles, any comments?
Yeah, just to council on the first comment and to the councillor, the thought process always around allowing, it wasn't a household, like we could take, it's about an individual, right? So every resident would have entitlement to a card, right? So, and I realize at the risk that people are suggesting that somebody may pass the card to a non-resident, but I think council's just identified that you have to have the card to get in. You have to have your ID to get in. So I think when we're letting somebody in, you're going to have the identification. The hope here in talking with some other departments is that as residents have these passes, they could use them potentially, and we're having conversations at the museum. Could you use them to do an event at the museum and be registered for that? Or at the Valley Health and Wellness Center? So while we set up a system for the beach, I think the original, like our intent is that an individual or resident of the city could have one because they could then use it for another task later. So it wasn't about a household, it was about an individual. And our goal would not be to allow, one individual to have 5 or 6. It would be for an individual to have 1. And we would see how this goes, and most likely we'll be back to council suggesting a replacement fee if one is lost, to try to prevent this whole concept that somebody might try to get a number of these out at once. So I guess that's the history, or that's the thought process behind it. We're happy to take direction if we want to limit it to one a household, but our thought was it was about becoming a residence pass over time.
Okay. Councillor?
Thank you.
Great, thanks. I don't see any further questions. Councillor Clayliff? Oh, sorry. Councillor Clayliff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick follow-up to my question regarding the B&Bs and that. I think you perhaps could even look at those a little bit differently, because usually their guests would be out of town, so therefore they would be paying guests at the beach, and that could work out. I guess it would just be a question as to the spaces, because we're allowing Port Colborne citizens first. They would have to pre-register, but perhaps something could be put in place like that. I'm not looking for these guests to get to go to the beach free if they're not in-town residents. So I guess there's a lot more to it. It's complicated, but they would be paying a fee as any out-of-town guest would be. But I guess it would just be that since they're staying here overnight, perhaps, I'm not sure how that could work, that maybe they would have to pre-register ahead with the owner of the establishment so that they could purchase the tickets for them. I'm thought about it. I don't know. It needs more thought as to how to handle that. But I know I've gotten the question already, so I know you're going to get it too. I'll leave it with you to solve.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. We'll leave that for Director Bowles to take back with him. Seeing no further questions, the motion is to receive. All those in favor, please raise a hand. That's carried. Thank you, Councillor. Council, we're going to take a 2-minute recess. As my good friend from the Councillor of Hamilton, our chair of the NPCA, says, a biological break. So we'll take a 2-minute biological break. Thank you. Okay, so item 7.7 is the Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2021-127 be received, and that the recommendation in Appendix A of Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2021-127 be approved. I have Councilors Bodner and Wells moving that. Councilor Bodner.
Mr. Mayor, I'm okay with this. I read a word wrong in it. I was going to, thought it meant something else, but I'm okay with the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. That's a good one. Good. Well, I got through it pretty quick. Okay, we have item 7.8. That Chief Administrative Office Report 2021-116 be received. That Council requests the Niagara Region's licensing department staff to implement licensing of lodging houses in the Niagara region. And that if regional staff does not wish to pursue regional licensing of lodging homes, city staff are directed to initiate the process of licensing at the municipal level. I have Councilors Bagu and Kalaloff moving this. Councilor Bagu.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the CAO for getting us up. I know it's a long time in coming, and former councilors also, plus some councilors that are still here, had a lot to do with this. And I also like to thank our MPP, Mr. Birch, for bringing it up to legislative, past second reading. We're still hoping that the Ontario government will take control over this. And it's a lot of responsibility. I have a couple of questions on it. For the report, the cost of some of the inspections, like the fire inspections, the regional health inspections, is there a cost to the municipality or to the license holder for these inspections?
Mr. CAO?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Bagu, obviously the recommendation here from staff, we think this is something that the city could regulate. We think that we are the third choice in order of preference to regulate, really support the idea of a provincial law, and in second position, a regional bylaw that covers the entire region. If we did go the route of having a city bylaw, you would need to bring that bylaw forward at another meeting, so we couldn't just pass a bylaw tonight, although I have attached a draft bylaw for council to review. Part of that bylaw would be the licensing regime, and what I mean by regime is the forms and the fees and the costs. So when it comes to licensing, we do try to charge a license fee that matches the true cost of providing a service. So that's why sometimes you'll see, a fire inspection could be hundreds of dollars, even though it seems like it's a 1 hour meeting or an appointment to inspect a building. There's a lot of work that takes place behind the scenes. There's everything from, the training that the fire inspector has to take in order to do those inspections. So you will see a fee if the city does decide to proceed with a city bylaw that will include those. Now, the regional public health inspection, that would be a regional fee and would be up to the region to establish the amount of that fee. But I would suggest that the city would have a fee somewhere in the order of magnitude of over $100 per year for providing a license that's administered by the city.
Councilor Bagu?
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Just a comment. I would love to see the province take this over. Maybe with COVID, things would change. And the regional, I think it was a past regional government that, or elected officials that did go forward with this. And so if our province doesn't go forward, hopefully our new regional councillors will go along with it. And if not, I'm glad to take our municipality, take it on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kalaloff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I too just want to say thank you for, I know all the hard work that's gone into this, coming from the medical profession, and I've visited a couple of these establishments in town, and and they're appalling. Some of them, the care and our most vulnerable people, and it makes me very sad. So I want to also thank Regional Councillor Barbutters. I know the work that she's done on all of this as well, and I know it has to go forward. COVID brought a lot of other places to light, things that we needed to fix as a province, and they are getting the attention, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed this will too. As Councillor Begg, you said, hopefully it will be provincially, but if they won't do it, we have to. There's no two ways about it. But anyway, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the work that everyone's done on this, and I hope we can see it to fruition very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, Council. Item 7.9. That Corporate Services Department Report 2021-75 be received, that the Director of Corporate Services Treasurer be directed to resume normal tax collection processes, including moving forward and beginning the process that could lead to a tax sale of properties that have not paid for 3 years in accordance with the steps outlined in page 4 of Corporate Services Department Report 2021-75. I have Councillors Beauregard and Bruno to put that on the floor. I'll go to Councillor Beauregard. Oh, sorry, we're just bringing the councillor back. He had a conflict with the last one. There we go. Councillor Beauregard, we're on the 7.9 property tax collection history, which you asked to have. So I have you and Councillor Bruno moving that, and I'm going to you for questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was watching and I wanted to say something, but I was unable to at the time. So through you to Director Bowles, in your report, you recommend that the city proceed with the tax collection process, despite us still being in COVID-19 lockdown. So my question to you is, how can we continue to assist those residents who rely on our COVID relief provisions? Yes. How can we? Yeah. How can we continue to assist those?
Mr. Bowles, clarification.
Yeah, through the mayor to council. So we had 12 residents apply, and half of them have paid up in full at this point in time. The other half, we've been having conversations about a collection plan going forward. We know that this is something that's important to this council, and it's important to, I think, everybody to handle the COVID-19 situation, to be there for our residents. If council was to direct us, we'd be happy to continue to work with those. But I would just identify to council that we do have normal processes where we work with taxpayers all the time that don't pay or miss payments. And this report just recommends that we would continue with those. If council wanted to direct us to continue to waive the interest and penalty for those remaining on the program, staff is happy to accommodate that going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. But with regards to the tax sale portion, is this not the brunt of this ask from this recommendation from staff? Is to get back online with those tax sales for those that haven't paid taxes? Yes, through yourself to council, that is the majority of the report. It does identify that at the end of 2020, the city had about 4.4 million outstanding in taxes. It's staff's point of view anyways, in looking around at other municipalities that have also started their property tax processes to move to tax collection or potential property sale, that this is something that's starting to occur in municipalities across the province. We'd recommend to be able to do it here in the city as well. We identified to council that it takes about a year to 14 months to go from the period of time where you start the process to where you actually get to a tax sale situation. And we do identify that in going through that process, most of the time,
and you can actually see, I think, in the numbers that are in the report, we do come to a situation where we have resolved the matter before we get to tax sale. So I do recognize that COVID-19 is ongoing, and I do point out to council that we do have the vast majority of our taxpayers continue to pay on time, with 6 remaining or 6 on the program with unpaid balances at the time of writing this report.
Okay, Councillor?
Well, I would like to hear what other councillors have to say, if any, and then I would like to propose something.
Okay, Councillor Demary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Bowles and to the rest of council, I was really pleased that we put this program in place to begin with, because it certainly did help to ease some of the immediate effects of COVID. But since then, there have been some government programs brought forward and some means of relief out in the community to make it a little bit easier for some people that have dealt with some of the harsher effects. And I'm sure that our tax collection department will work with people that may be having ongoing results. But for the most part, I think that if someone is suffering a work shortage, there are opportunities now that didn't exist before, in which we needed relief programs such as this. As long as we can get assurances that our property tax department will work with people who are in those situations, then I see no problem with going forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Bowles, anything to
add? Through the mayor to council, I can definitely give you our assurance that our tax department will continue to work with individuals like we have through the whole pandemic. Also identifying that there's nobody that also applied for the program that's even on the list that we put forward for council to consider. So none of the individuals on the property numbers that we identified were on that. And in fact, actually 2/3 of the balance relates to, as we identify, one developer.
Okay, Councillor Demary, you're all set?
Yes, thank you. That's everything I wanted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Demary. I think, and a few of us have been around a long time, and I think I can never remember our tax department personnel not dealing fairly with people that are in a genuine bind. They do it quietly, they do it behind the scenes, but I have all the confidence in the world that Mr. Bowles will carry on that good work. And I don't want to see people ducking behind the COVID thing for something that they've been outstanding taxes for years. And I was very happy to hear that anybody that applied for the assistance wasn't on this list. So I have no problem moving ahead with this. I think our tax people will be more than fair with anybody that's in a genuine bind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. And just with the last 2 councillors that spoke, Mr. Bowles, just want to make it clear to the public that we are not stopping what this council put in place about a year. Pretty much almost a little after a year. I think it was in September or so. We did a bit of a change with regards to the taxation and how we're dealing with our citizens. So you're not recommending any of those changes, that we're going to continue that system where if people definitely need help, they contact your department and you'll proceed just like you have been over the last 8 to 10 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the mayor, to yourself, to council. So I think there's been a lot of conversation about that. And I think, and I know actually, Councillor Beauregard actually called me on that as well. And he did point out that when we put together this report, we did actually suggest that we would end that penalty and interest relief program, because we found out that in the rest of Niagara, the other municipalities had also come to a conclusion of their programs. And that's where I'd mentioned, I guess, earlier in my comments on this topic that, if this council wants to continue with that, in line with what you said, Mayor, we as staff are happy to continue with that. We just, when we put forward the report, we just noted and we advised council that others haven't continued with it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beauregard?
So through your worship, I would like to propose this amendment, and it would essentially still follow in with the remarks of Councillor Demary, yourself, and Councillor Bodner, as well as what Director Bowles has been saying. It's just, so I'll just state it. So it's that staff be directed to extend the COVID-19 penalty and interest relief program for previously approved participants until June 30th, 2021.
Okay. Have a seconder to that? Councillor Demary? Any questions on that? In reality, council, we're just going to continue what we've been doing over the last, I think, since the fall. And I think Mr. Bowles has stated this pretty succinctly, that we don't have a lot of people that do this, but for those that have paid their taxes and away they went. So I have no issues with this. So if I see no further questions, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That's, yeah, that's carried. Okay, back to the motion as amended. Any further questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Beauregard. Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Item 7.10, that the recommendation is that Planning and Development Department Report 2021-126 be received, and that the Council of the City of Port Colborne removes the lands legally known as Lot 29 on Plan 1029 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 664 King Street, from the Municipal Registry of Heritage Properties. I have Councillors Danch and Councillor Bruno to move that. I'm going to go to Councillor Danch.
Sorry about the delay. Clicked the wrong button here. Talked to Gary a little bit, and I talked to one of my real estate friends, and no doubt, like the report says, the house is extremely tired, and it needs to be updated big time. I find it hard to believe that you could come to our community from where you're from, and your lawyer doesn't find this. That was one of the things that my real estate friend said to me, like, that should have been on the title. So for that person that comes here now after they started with the crowbar and stuff like that, we all have rules. And yeah, it'll be nice when that house is gone and you've updated and stuff like that. But I think you might want to go back to your lawyer and ask them how they missed something like that. That was my only opinion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. First, I would like to thank staff for when the applicant came in to apply for a demolition permit, and then all of a sudden finds out that he's on a registry. And so to turn that around and get it to a meeting in 26 days is pretty remarkable per, I think other standards. To Councillor Danch's point, I think, and he may remember, Mr. Fontaine had this problem at the old Humberston Builders. And lo and behold, he gets a contractor in, he has a pending sale, and he finds out that he's on this registry. And so upon investigation at that time, I ended up getting 2 pages of people who are on this registry. I would say virtually no one knows they're on the registry. And it's my understanding, maybe Mr. Schultz could confirm this, that these properties, while this is not a heritage property, it's not listed on title. So based on that list of probably 60 to 80 houses, there's people living in this community right now that are on a list that don't know it. From the history of this thing, when some students put it together for planning or the museum back a number of years ago. I think the fact that we've seen 2 of these inside of 6 to 8 months is attributable to the fact that people are now buying houses in Port Colborne with the housing demand to purpose of tear it down and do something, or tear it down and rezone and do something different. I'd like to not see this keep happening. And to that end, I would venture, when I looked at that list when Mr. Fontaine had the problem, that there's probably 25 low-hanging fruit that I question whether those houses are even there, let alone not had 10 renovations and destroyed any heritage artifact there. But to that end, you've got to put horsepower to it. And so my concern is that, and I spoke to the CAO today, and my concern is that, you know, the museum, things have quieted down there. I presume they're always busy, but let's face it, COVID has changed the landscape. We have some resource people there. I understand we may be hiring a planning student. To me, the issue is get on these 70 or 80 properties, take a drive-by, clean 25 off just by looking at them, just like this house, that there's no heritage value there, and then move to do the rest of them. But it's going to require somebody that, whether it's a student or a resource, like I concern myself with planning because, you know, stuff can be dropped on their desk with the best laid plans, and everybody has to pivot and do it. And I could see a student coming in and potentially never getting to it. So I'd like to see some kind of a plan that secons somebody or a student dedicated to this and clean the slate on this once and for all, so that we don't have other people running into the same problem. And then when there is a real list distilled from this, that the people who live in those houses get a notification that they're on this list. Because I can tell you that right now, I doubt very many of them, through sales or no fault of their own, have never been advised that they're on that list. And so this is an economic development issue and a red tape issue as well. So I'm wondering if the CAO's had a chance today to speak to either Heritage Archives people or planning to see if there can be a game plan for this. And I'd like to thank, if you don't know, Councillor Beauregard, after the previous incident, volunteered his time to set this up. But my God, he's, you know, he's like everybody else. They've got a day job, and he's volunteering to do that inside the confines of being on the museum committee. We need something better and quicker and more efficient than his good volunteerism. So I don't know if Mr. Schultz could speak to the issue of the registry and is it on title, and if Mr. Louis could speak to the conversation I had with him today.
Mr. CAO?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I'll let the planner answer the question about the registering on title. I'm leaning towards that it's no, but let's hear it from him for sure. I do know that we often tell people through a compliance letter that's issued by the city. One of the problems that we're up against, that's a compliance letter that a purchaser's lawyer pays the city to issue that tells you about outstanding orders on title and would tell you about this. But many times the lawyers don't seek those anymore because they use title insurance, and that doesn't really tell you any of the conditions that are on the property. But to the larger question, Yeah, I did spend a little bit of time on this at the office today. So there are hundreds of properties on the registry. The registry was put together in 2008. Some properties have been removed, and I think council in this term, every 5 or 6 or 8 months, we see another request to remove a property. And I think what council would like to see, if I can sort of make a mental leap here on behalf of council, is a list that's more cleaned up so that we don't have these requests coming to council on an ad hoc basis. We'd rather have a list that's curated, for lack of a better term. And so I spoke to the museum curator, and she said that she does have some student capacity, and she is hiring a permanent registrar. And of course, a registrar's job is to maintain a registry. So she definitely was willing to partner with planning. Planning has plans to bring in a summer student, as they typically do. And one of the jobs that was going to be undertaken by that summer student was some maintenance on this registry. So I think, and I spoke to the acting director, which is the city clerk, and she committed to partnering with the museum staff. So I think we can do a 2-department collaboration, planning on the planning side and museum on the historical side or the heritage side, to make sure that this list is, like I said, to use that word, curated. I also took the additional step of speaking to Councillor Beauregard, who is the city's representative on the museum board and the heritage committee of the museum board, and he said that he was willing to step in, as Councillor Bruno just pointed out, willing to step in and make sure that this is seen through to some stage of completion. So I think the answer is yes, we can take some time this summer to whittle down this list to a list that's really suitable for the purpose for which it's intended, rather than just based on a year of construction. That is, to make sure there's some heritage component around the architecture or the people who lived in the building, or more tangible heritage features than just the year of construction.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Mr. Schultz, with regards to the question of these being on the deed, I guess, of the property, can you answer that question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. That was very well said, Scott. Hit the nail on the head with that one. There is a difference between a property being designated and a property being listed on the municipal registry. So for properties that are designated, that is a property that council or the heritage committee of the day decided that their that dwelling or building is significant and deserve to be protected. So that is when a bylaw is passed and it is registered on title. So if a lawyer did do a title search for the property, they would be able to see that on there. On the other end, with a listed property, the city does have a large registry. I want to say 500 to 600 properties on there. In comparison with Niagara Lake, arguably one of the most heritagely significant municipalities in the region, they have about 50 or 60 properties listed on their registry. So that just gives you a little bit of a comparison. But the main thing with a property that's listed is that it prevents demolition. It basically puts a moratorium on the property from being demolished for 60 days. Council has that time frame to make a decision on whether or not they want to force designate the property, which in my experience or review, I don't think the city has ever done to a property, or they will permit the demolition and subsequently remove it from the list. I hope that answers your question, but I agree with Mr. Louis' response about having staffing to look into that. That's been a bit of a challenge, but we have designated our summer student to, that would be a big project for them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. So council, so if we can get back to the actual recommendation, I think we've heard from the CAO's office that he will move forward with that project so that can get done with regards to other properties. But if we can deal with this specific property this evening, I don't think we need, speaking with the clerk, we don't need an amendment to this. The CAO is going to take that on. So I did have Councillor Demary and then Councillor Bodnar. Councillor Demary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you rather. First, just to let everyone know, the city did once force a designation, and it was on Rose Lawn. So that did get taken to court, and that's how we got Roseland designated. So that did happen. And that there was that. As far as the registry goes, though, that was done by 2 summer students that were hired and decided to do the registry. And they started with a list of just all the century home rule, right? Where you put every century home on the list. But unfortunately, then you go through the list and start taking houses off if they don't qualify. They didn't get that far. So there was very few houses that actually got removed. And this is a huge list as a result. So I would bet you could go through. I looked at the list just recently because I still have it. You probably end up with 3 houses if you went through that list now. So it is a good idea to go in there and just slash and burn all of them and get them through. It might be a better idea to just look around and see, forget that list entirely and look around and create a new list just by what's out there. But anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Councillor Bodner, you took your hand down. You're okay?
As usually when Councillor Bruno speaks before me, he's so eloquent that he actually said everything I was going to say. So I'm done. Thanks.
He definitely did take your time. Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship to council, I just would like to say thank you to Councillor Bruno for his remarks, as well as to C.L. Louis for his remarks as well. The committee, the Heritage Committee or subcommittee of the Museum Board is looking forward to really tackling this registry. It is the main goal of this subcommittee to do that. We have been meeting currently on an ad hoc basis due to COVID-19, but since it's a supposed conception, we have been, or inception has been focusing on doing on this registry. So we are looking forward to it. We understand that at the beginning of the summer, before the summer, we should be tackling that registry. I'm not sure if we can just remove the registry completely and start anew. I don't think it works that way. I also do know or believe that there has been some major changes to the Heritage Act, so we'll have to look at that. But I do say that we look forward to the changes in having the museum and planning staff participate or facilitate this action. So I look forward to it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Okay. So dealing with the recommendation, then we know what direction has gone to staff over and above the recommendation. So all those in favor, please raise their hand. That's carried. Thank you. Item 7.11, recommendations that Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2021-124 be received, that Kendra Cousineau, Emma Boline, Briar Messing, and Christopher Room be appointed as municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute the appropriate bylaw. This is moved by Councillor Bodner and Councillor Danch. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see this is written by Sherry Hanson. I don't know whether she's with us, but I see Mr. Cartwright might be there too. Good. Can I just ask, is this going to put us in a position where we'll have the same amount of bylaw officers? Will we have more than last summer, or will we have less? If you could answer that.
Mr. Cartwright?
Your Worship, Councillor Bodner and all of Council. Right now, that'll give us the 3 students, as you see, and Mr. Broom with regards to zoning will be assisting with us from time to time. But the main intent of his position is to assist in the zoning issues with regards to enforcement. So the same number of people will be available to us this year. We are looking at shift changes and changing when we work and how many work, so that our people, we're hoping to have 3 people working most weekends. That's the intent of where we're trying to go with this. That's an increase from last year.
Yes, and I think that's important, and I heard that mentioned before, but some people are asking that exact question that are in problematic areas like Pleasant Beach or Wildwood. And they just wanted to be assured that we have a plan for this summer, and it sounds like we'll have people better laid out for different times of the day. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. On to item 16, Council. These are motions. 16.1 is a memorandum from Councillor Wells with regards to the Friendship Trail crossings. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am requesting that council approve this following motion. The Director of Public Works undertake a review of the road junctions and the Friendship Trail for site obstructions and consideration for parking areas to ensure site triangles and unobstructed and consistent with the comprehensive zoning bylaw 6575/30/18, and bring back to council in the second quarter a report for recommendations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Council. Councillor Wells. Councillor Bodnar, will you second that? Thank you. Any questions with regards to this? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm okay with this. I think because we have some new staff, but I think councilors that have been around for a while, I think we've done this at least twice before. So there may be some reports that staff could dig up, and taking obviously into consideration whatever may be coming forward new, that some of the properties beside the trail are owned by the same people that owned them when those reports were done. And there may be some verbiage in there of why they didn't want anything on their property or close to their property. So just for a little background, they may be able to, staff may be able to glean something from those old reports if they're still around. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And when you brought that up, the clerk's department shot their hand up very quickly to say they'd help find those reports for you.
All right.
Very good. Any further questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried. Item 16.2 is a memorandum from Councillor Wells. This is with regards to the federal government cannabis consultation with Health Canada. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am requesting that council approve the resolution that whereas the Government of Canada introduced Bill C-45, the Cannabis Act, to create the foundation for a comprehensive national framework to provide restricted access to regulated cannabis and to control its production, distribution, sale, importation, exportation, and possession. And whereas unlicensed and unmonitored cannabis grow operations have increasingly become a problem in communities in Ontario, as well as across the country. And whereas these operations are allowed to establish with little or no consultation with the local community and municipalities, and are often only made aware of their existence after conflicts arise with the neighboring landowners. And whereas there is no direct communication or dedicated effort to provide a communication channel between municipal government staff or police agencies for dealing with Health Canada registrations and licenses. And whereas the City of Port Colborne has not been consulted by Health Canada prior to the issuance of licenses for properties not in compliance with municipal zoning bylaws. And whereas loopholes in existing federal legislation allow these large-scale grow ops to establish and operate without any of the regulations or protocols that licensed and monitored operations need to adhere to. And whereas the police have not being given lawful authority to lay charges under the Cannabis Act to appropriately respond to violations of Health Canada registrations and licenses. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Port Colborne urges the federal government and Health Canada to amend the legislation under these facilities, under which these facilities operate, to ensure the safety and rights of the local communities in which they are situated are respected. Limit the authorization to produce cannabis plants to personal medicinal use to the maximum daily quantity as prescribed by the professional medical practitioner to members of the immediate family living in the same residence. Prohibit the ability for an individual to designate the growing of and processing of medical cannabis plants and cannabis products by another individual on their behalf, unless that individual is a member of the immediate family and resides in the same residence. Issue one license to the property where the growing of medical cannabis for personal purposes is permitted. Require federal licensing and registrations for designated growers to conform with local zoning and control bylaws. Make it mandatory as part of the registration that the applicant provide a signed and dated declaration from the local municipality providing consent to the production and quantity of cannabis plants and products prior to approval of a license to grow medical cannabis plants for personal consumption. Ensure local authorities are provided with notification of any license issuance, amendment, suspension, reinstatement, or revocation within their region. Provide dedicated communication with local governments and police services. Provide lawful authority to police agencies to lay charges when registered or licensed operations grow in excess of their registered registration or license through Health Canada, and provide efficient enforcement support and guidance to local municipalities for dealing with land use complaints relating to cannabis. And furthermore, it is resolved that the City of Port Colborne will forward this motion to the following people: the Cannabis Consultants of Canada.ca, the Honorable Bill Blair, the Honorable David Laminette, MP Dean Allison, MP Chris Biddle, MP Tony Bladenell, MP Vance Badaway, President Mickey Ruth, Chief of Police Brian Larkin, the Honorable Christine Elliott, the Honorable Doug Downey, the Honorable Sylvia Jones, MPP Sam Osterhoff, MPP Jenny Stevens, MPP Wayne Gale, MPJ Jeff Birch, Claire Park Weaver, Chief of Police Paul Peterson, Regional Chair Jim Bradley, Mayor and the mayors of all the identified municipalities. Thanks for bearing with me on this long motion. Thank you for your considerations.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Before I make comment, can I have Councillor Bruno second that? Councillor Bruno will second that. And just for Council's edification here, we had asked that everybody that wants to put in information do so with the Wednesday post our last meeting. So Councillor Wells put together this very complete wording with regards to everything that all of us basically have been talking about for the last little while when one of these facilities pops up and they go ahead and start processing or trying to process without fulfilling our regulations and rules within the City of Port Colborne. So that, as you all know, this isn't something that just popped up in the middle of nowhere. The municipalities across Canada have been talking about this, and specifically Norfolk County that's close to us, and then our Police Services Board, which really initiated this through a letter from myself and Chief McCullough. So I really want to thank Councillor Wells for capturing everything that pretty much everyone here has talked about and said, not just at council chambers, but in specific meetings we've had with regards to this issue. So I'm going to go to questions. I'm going to go to Councillor Bagu first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also like to congratulate Councillor Wells. Very well done written. But as Councillor Bogner mentioned, the verbiage, I just don't understand a couple of the items for clarification, if you could. The to prohibit the ability for an individual to designate the growing and processing medical cannabis plants and cannabis products by another individual on their behalf, unless that individual is a member of the immediate family and resides in the same residence. I'd just like to know some clarification. So does that mean if a senior living in an apartment building somewhere in Port Colborne has the okay by the doctor, has a prescription for medical marijuana, they cannot have somebody grow it for them because they don't live in the same residence as that person growing? Is that the, am I understanding this correctly?
Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the legalization of cannabis, cannabis is available to all adults. We have 2 stores in Port Colborne right now. You can call, you can have it delivered to your location. It's the availability of this right now is so easy. When the act came in place, that was not there. Right now, what the act is allowing is the illegal growth, and if it were not so readily available for people to acquire, then that would not be necessary. That portion of the motion, and yes, that is limiting the growth to people of the immediate family within the same residence, and would not allow a person living in an apartment to have somebody else grow it for him. That's where this problem comes in right now. As they're taking advantage of those situations, they're really not growing it for those individuals, or they're growing more than for those individuals, and then they're selling it on the black market. So that is one of the solutions I believe would resolve that.
Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these solutions here, these 3 paragraphs, were they put in by you, or is this from who is the author of actually those recommendations?
That was me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you, Councillor Bagu. I have Councillor Demary.
Sorry about that. I couldn't get my mute button off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Wells. Harry, thank you so much for writing this and taking the time to do all the research and the work on doing the wordsmithing and that sort. It's certainly long needed, and I'm glad to see this come forward. I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Harry, for doing this. Just in response to Councillor Bagu's question about somebody in an apartment and getting somebody else to grow it for them. If you remember when this first came out, it was a cost issue also, where the government felt that people could arrange to get it growing, or people argued that they could buy it cheaper for somebody growing it for them than they could from the government store. But I think that if that is the case, there's all kinds of people that have medication, and if their income doesn't allow them to get it, there's remedies through different government agencies to help them with the prescriptions, and this should be no different. I just think we're in this, we need to be prepared to be in this for the long haul. We can't slack off. This isn't going to get, well, it'd be great if it would. All of a sudden, Health Canada gets religion and this is solved. But I think we're going to be in this for the long haul, and please don't give up on this. Keep hammering away at it. It's quality of life for many people live beside these people that are growing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard.
Through your worship to Councillor Wells and Council, I'd like to say that I understand where this is coming from and why we're doing this. There needs to be some type of stricter regulation on these particular cannabis grow-ups. But one thing that stood out in my mind is that there's case law showing that restricting medical cannabis to individuals inflicts upon Section 7 charter rights. So this is something that goes beyond the federal government. The federal government could be in going against the charter in implementing maybe some of these things. So the only ones that I think in my mind that may pose some issues for the federal government would be the limit the authorization to produce cannabis plants for persons for medical use, that paragraph, the prohibit the ability for an individual to designate the growing and processing of medical cannabis plants, and the issue one license to the property where the growing of medical cannabis for personal purposes is to be permitted. So those are the only ones I see a potential issue where it may conflict with case law, but the other ones for sure I agree with. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Demary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Councillor Bodnar just got me thinking about something, and Councillor Beauregard's comments just confirmed where I was going to go with this. I would like to see, Councillor Wells, if you would add to the motion, maybe we could do a friendly amendment here, that we also seek that medical marijuana would be added to the approved drug list, so that it would be covered in the cases of through OHIP, the drugs that are covered through OHIP, because at this point it is not, and for those people, there's they would be needing to grow it if it were cost prohibited. Mind you, they don't grow Tylenol, and sometimes they need that. So, but it comes down to the fact that adding it to the drug list, the approved drug list, it would make a big difference. It certainly wouldn't go to private insurance companies, but it could certainly go to the government insurance company.
Councillor Wells?
I would have no problem with adding that to the motion.
We can take that as a friendly amendment, Madam Clerk? Yes, we can. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Demary.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Wells. Is there anyone in the realm of the legal profession that does any pro bono work on charter challenges? So I noticed, like, we have the Minister of Justice there, but there are lots of groups and entities that do recommendations like this that get some sense of oversight by someone in the legal profession. Perhaps in this case, it is a charter challenge, just to make sure that that we've covered all the bases. And also to you, do you know if a lot of the, or actually I'm going to ask the mayor this too, with the police mayor on our side in some of this and their associations, is there any way that the group, many of whom are listed here in the legal profession and the police world, is there anybody there that can be contacted just to have a cursory look at this?
I can actually ask Chief McCullough, because they're preparing a letter on behalf of the Niagara Regional Police to send prior to the date, which is actually quickly approaching. So I could have it sent to him tomorrow and have our staff at the NRP take a peek at this and see how it fits in with what they're doing. Obviously, these are recommendations that we would ask that the government look at, and I'm sure if what Councillor Beauregard brought up, that if it's something that really they can't do because of the charter rights, they're not going to do it anyways. So these aren't written in stone. So but I can do that in the morning. If this passes tonight, we can ask, and if there is something that they may want to omit, I can contact Councillor Wells, and we can obviously, if it's one of those where it's not going to go anywhere, that we can omit it if council has no issue with that. Yeah, we can have them take a look. Councillor Wells, is that all right with you?
And just respectfully, I just wanted to thank Harry, but run it by him too for all the yeoman work he did here.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Wells, is that okay that we can at least send this tomorrow to get just a quick overview and just to make sure that everything we got in there is fine?
No, absolutely. Just in regards to the charter, I have been looking into that. I, at this point in time, don't know anybody that does it pro bono, but I will continue to look, and if I find that, then I will definitely bring it back. But as regards to the challenge, and maybe Councillor Beauregard will have some comments to this, is it goes both ways. Not only is the user rights taking into consideration in the charter, also the non-user's rights is taking into consideration in the charter. And there have, to my understanding, is there are being some challenges raised with regards to non-users being impacted by users of cannabis. So again, I am just learning more as I go along, and maybe Councillor Beauregard can respond to that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beauregard?
Through your worship to Councillor Wells, I don't know about those in particular, those cases that are going through the courts by the sounds of it, but I definitely would think that that would be taken into consideration. If you want some good reading, if you can find it, there's a case out there that's called Allard, A-L-L-A-R-D versus Canada. It really, in the early sections of the decision, it really outlines the history of the decisions that have gone through, and just about cannabis and designated growing, and how these regulations on designated growing exist prior to the Cannabis Act. It's been in existence for quite some time, so I suggest you maybe read that decision. We could talk later if you'd like. Okay.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Bodner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd say it'd be okay to send it off for a look at, for somebody if we've got it right. And I'd be more concerned about that if it was, if we were the only one in Ontario doing it. But they're going to be getting hopefully thousands and thousands of these. And I think it'll come out in the wash as to what can be upheld and what can't be. But, so we're not the only one sending these out there, and they'll distill them down, and if something can be used, hopefully it will. And Harry, don't look too far for that Allard versus. I think I got it in my bottom drawer over here, so I'll see if I can pull it out for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno, is your hand just still up, or you have a question?
Sorry, beg your pardon. I forgot to take it down. Thank you.
That's okay. Great, thanks. Okay, Council. Again, we'd like to thank Councillor Wells for putting everything together on this. With no further questions, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Council. Any notices of motion this evening? Okay, seeing none. Minutes of boards, committees, and commissions. We have the Port Colborne Public Library Board minutes of March the 2nd, 2021. If I can have Councillors Bagu and Wells move that. Any questions to those minutes? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, Council. Bylaws. There has been a change in the bylaws based on our meeting tonight. I'm going to move the following bylaws. Bylaw 19.3, Bylaw 19.6, Bylaw 19.7, Bylaw 19.8, and Bylaw 19.9. If I can have Councillors Danch and Beauregard move those. Any questions on any of those bylaws? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. And I think that's it. Before I move to go into confidential in camera, just like to thank everybody for watching this evening, and great debate again, council, and thank you staff for those in attendance and the answers that you gave this evening. So at this time I'd have Councillors Bagu and Councillors Wells move the council to now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters. Item 20.1, minutes of the closed session portion of the April 19th, 2021 council meeting. Item 20.2, Chief Administrative Office Report 2021-135, pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals, affecting the municipality or local board, and 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Item 20.3, Chief Administrative Office Report 2021-129, and 20.4, Chief Administrative Office Report 2021-130, both pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Questions? All in favor, please raise their hand. That's carried. We will now break, so council, if you can log out of this one and log into your next Zoom meeting in 10 minutes. And Councillor Beauregard will have them text you when to come back in for the last two issues. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.